Welcome to the Gray Man Podcast. This retired counterterrorism agent, lifelong martial artist, and personal defense expert joins his best friend, producer Jim, to talk about personal defense and world events. This is the Gray Man, Mike Cyan.
Hey everybody, thanks again for joining us this week. This is obviously the Gray Man Podcast. I'm Mike Cyan, your host, with producer Jim. This week, we are going to talk about the Boogaloo. So this is episode 2, the Boogaloo, and we're going to cover things like that movement, rioting, some protesting, the things that are going on in the U.S. right now, and maybe some civic responsibility and whatever other rabbit hole this takes Jim and I down.
And I promised before we get into the Boogaloo, I also promised at the end of last week's podcast to talk about the number 42 and the significance, because I feel like that may come up from time to time just because it's such an integral part of my life and who I've become. And before I do that, I just wanted to say quick thanks to everybody out there that listened to or watched our podcast. Yes. It's been a fantastic response. Thank you for feedback. Some folks that had some critiques for us, and just the fact that this is something that means something to someone or anyone or people more than just Mike and I. That means a lot. So my thanks, Mike's thanks. You know, we really appreciate that and look forward to going down this journey together. And part of what led me to this stage of my life, as a young man, I read a book from Douglas Adams called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you don't know the book, or if you've not read anything by Douglas Adams, it's a British sci-fi comedy. So if you think about Monty Python meets Star Trek, right, Mike? Is that kind of that's a good analogy?
Solid, accurate, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the first books that I read then is this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And to give you an idea of the silly sense of humor that the author has, it's a 5-book trilogy. So it's designed as a trilogy, but it takes 5 books to get through. It was one of the first really big books that I read of my own volition, and it impacted me to the point that almost as much as Star Trek: The Next Generation. That's the timeline that we're talking about. Those both happened at the same time. And one of the themes of the book then is based on this collection of intergalactic species trying to answer the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So that's a major concept. And the actual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there is an actual Hitchhiker's Guide. And it's kind of funny to me because now we have Wikipedia, which is what the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy really is in the book. Mm-hmm. But the story that they're telling is how they've come to, like all of these species have come to figure out what the answer is. And they do that by building this massive computer called Deep Thought. And it took 7.5 million years to think about what the answer is. So they built this massive computer, Deep Thought, and all of these species, all of the brains, everybody came together, and the computer said, you know, what do you want? And they said, we would like to know the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Deep Thought then said, okay, I can tell you that in 7.5 million years. So they waited, more generations, life goes on, they come back 7.5 million years later, this big, massive get together, everybody's there waiting. What is the answer? And so they pose the question one more time. It wakes up. What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And the computer responded, 42. That's it. That's the answer. And what they realized after all these years and all the thinking the computer did is it doesn't matter. To me, this is what I took from it. It doesn't matter what the question is or the answer. It's just we're all here. We're all living. So they actually went on from there. And part of the story is that's how Earth came to be. Is Earth is another computer that was built to figure out the question so that they knew what 42 really meant. But it doesn't go very well. Spoiler alert for the people of Earth. But it's still a great story. If you love that kind of humor, if you love science fiction and you've got some time to get some reading done, I highly recommend that book. But the 42, when that comes up, that's my answer when someone asks a very deep question that sometimes might not be relevant, or even if it is, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how we got there or what the question or the answer or any of that stuff is. It's always just 42. So that's where that comes from. And that's about as deep as I get. So that's why Mike gets to be the brains and I click on buttons.
We are all screwed.
we are all screwed. I'll cheers to that. So by the way, yeah, this week's podcast brought to you in part by Woodford Reserve. So I appreciate that opportunity. And also that brings us to a new segment. Can we introduce a new segment?
I think we should.
Should we do this? So we've decided, since we don't have actual sponsors yet, that we're going to have a segment here called Free Plugs, which means someone, some brand, some company will get a free plug. They're not paying us for this. It's a lot of times in no way organized, so you get what you pay for. But these are brands and companies that we recommend as either an individual or maybe the both of us, or maybe we just recognize that it's something that our listeners and viewers might want to partake in. And I think this first one that we chose as a free plug, I know that Mike knows the ownership intimately. You might even say the ins and outs, but I'll leave that to you. So this first free plug, I turn over to Mike. This is Spectrum Fitness. So Mike, please tell us about this amazing company.
Thanks, Jim. So Spectrum Fitness is actually located in Minot, North Dakota, and it is a full fitness facility minus the weight room. So there's no free weights. It's all group fitness and martial arts and massage therapy. They take a holistic approach from wherever you're at to wherever you want to go. And one of the great things about the facility, knowing that I'm biased, happy to know the owner really well, one of the great things about it, that was their motto. They have two mottos that they live by. The first one is, we build finishers. So no matter where you start on your journey, whether it's your 1,000th is class.
How did that go?
I haven't had that much bourbon yet, by the way.
All right.
Or it's your first day ever walking in the gym. You've never taken a class, group fitness. You've never been with a personal trainer. You've never studied martial arts. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. They want to take you from where you're at to be a finisher at whatever your goal is. And the second motto, and I love this, is you're never alone. So unlike going to a traditional gym where you will go in there and there's just all these weight rooms, you got to figure out what you're doing on your own, you're always with somebody. You're always either with a personal trainer in an instructor-led class, or in the martial arts program, there's always multiple coaches on the mats, either in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or our full contact Kyokushin Karate, that will help you along the way. And we build community. We want you to be part of something bigger than yourselves, and to feel like you're not going to the gym, that you're coming home. Because if you're going to spend that much time outside of your house, you should be spending it with family. So if you're ever in Minot, North Dakota, and you want to swing by the facility, it's right on Broadway, right across from the airport, next to the bowling alley. Swing on by. If you can do a drop in for $10 for any martial or any group fitness class, or you can take a martial arts class for free first time to see what we're all about.
Cool. And this is an important part of the free plugs also. So bear with me. Spectrum Fitness has no affiliation with the Gray Man Podcast, does not condone our activities, and might not even know we exist. But we like Spectrum Fitness, so they get this free exposure for what that's worth. So I think we've taken care of all the legals there. And,
I think we have.
And yeah, so there you go. If anybody wants to get a free plug, reach out to us. And free plug. I guess I didn't think that through very much. You can take it for what it's worth. But
that's true. You get what you pay for.
Exactly. Right? And eventually we might have to start charging. We'll see how this works.
We'll see how it goes. Well, then that leads us to episode 2, the Boogaloo, and what that is all about. A lot of people may not know what the Boogaloo movement is, but it's certainly not really what this song is, although some of you out there are old enough you recognize this tune from a 1984 movie. So we're going to lead right into our discussion.
Here we go. So, this is it right here, right?
Oh,
this is what we're talking about?
No, well, I mean, it's a group of people, yes.
All right.
But not quite that.
All right.
So, really, in modern parlance, the Boogaloo is a movement in the U.S. Considered to be right-wing extremism. And we can get into left-wing extremism next time. We'll talk about Antifa and some of the other movements If people want, give us feedback if you want us to talk about that too. But the Boogaloo is considered a right wing. Wow, I cannot talk today. A right wing extremist movement that advocates civil war, not just change in the government, not just policy change or some of the other stuff that we're talking about. It actually advocates civil war in the United States. And I'll preface this part of my conversation by saying, yes, these are absolutely my own thoughts and opinions. They're not official take on a damn thing other than what I want to talk about. So keep that in mind before anybody's head out there explodes about anything that I'm going to say. Okay, especially if you're part of a militia or you're part of the Boogaloo. Okay, or you own a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, if we can get a head to explode, I think that would be awesome. That might go viral. So if your head explodes, yes, hashtag the Gray Man podcast and head exploding.
I also recognize. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I know nothing about this. I specifically did not research.
True.
This is the first time that I've heard anything other than I did watch the movie when it came out. So it was on HBO. I make no apology for having watched the movie. But so yeah, I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn more and how it ties into whether or not I can wear a Hawaiian shirt again.
This poor conversation. So within talking about the Boogaloo, we have to also recognize that violence, and because this is a group that does advocate violence, if you're thinking about civil war, violence has been a part of the American experience since our very inception. It's absolutely the reason we exist separate from France and England and Spain as our own nation. But that doesn't mean, in my opinion, that it needs to be our go-to movement or attitude every time something goes or doesn't go our way. I believe this is also relevant and timely based on the violence that's going on around the United States. There are several movements that are rioting, and I will tell you that rioting is different than protesting. Jim and I both we're very strong constitutionalists. We believe in our constitutional rights, and you 100% have the right to peaceably assemble and protest any injustice that you feel any part of society has endured. I 100% support that. I spent 23 years in uniform defending those very ideals. So for those of you that don't want people protesting and that don't like Black Lives Matter showing up and holding vigils or speeches and pick a movement, I don't care what it is. You're wrong, in my opinion. 100% absolutely wrong. Go back and read the Constitution and pull your head out of your ass.
So okay, so let's define this a little bit more. And I know, so this is kind of a side. How do you feel about burning the flag?
There's two things, right? As a guy who served under it, carried into battle and draped, watched it be draped over a coffin of a friend, I get a little upset with it. Very much so. And two, there are federal laws that prohibit it. It's a crime. So people are like, well, make it illegal. Dude, it's already illegal. If you read federal code, it's already illegal. So I do believe you should be punished for it. It is the symbol of our nation. I get why people would want, in some weird way, believe they're making a statement by burning it. But in my opinion, you lose a vast majority of potential viewers and followers of any particular statement that you have when you burn the emblem of the nation. And I think, in my opinion, that you are pissing on the grave of every single patriot, man or woman, or if you go back far enough in history, child, who has ever fought and died for the very ideals that flag stands for.
So I brought that up just to kind of give us that difference. There's protesting and there's rioting, and there are some gray areas in between. Like I appreciate that, Mike. We are constitutionalists. I have a firm belief in that. And I also recognize, and I know we both recognize, that there are gray areas through all this too. So when we say there's protesting and there's rioting, there's also things that happen in between. And I get the sense that Boogaloo sometimes infiltrates into one to lead it to the other. But that's purely a guess on my part at this point.
Well, you are pretty close to what's actually happening. What I'll do is I'll I'll start with the definitions between a protest and a riot. I think that's really important. Definitions are important, right? A protest is a complaint, objection, or display of unwillingness, usually to an idea or a course of action, an objection made to an official or a governing body. Completely covered by our Constitution. It's our First Amendment right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress. Riot is a violent public disorder or a tumultuous disturbance of the public peace by 3 or more persons assembled together and acting with common intent. So one is peaceful, even if it's loud, and even if they're saying things that you don't necessarily agree with. I hate the KKK, and I think white supremacy and any type of xenophobia is abhorrent, right? But they have the right to spew their views. They do. They don't have the right to beat the living dog shit out of you if you don't agree with them. Antifa, as much as I hate them, has the right to show up and speak their mind. They don't have the right to beat you over the head with a billy club because you don't agree with them. They don't have the right to smash windows. The minute that you use violence or the threat of violence to pursue your means, it is now a riot. And actually, the definition of terrorism involves the use or the threat of the use of violence for a political means.
Wow. So rioting is terrorism.
In my opinion, I 100% believe that rioting is terrorism.
All right.
You are destroying property and lives, right? To achieve some goal. At this point in America, I believe it's just violence for violence sake. It's diverged from the original intent, which I supported, to speak out against several injustices that have happened in the last pick a time frame.
Depends on
not all. And some of them are not. Like we could differentiate Minneapolis, in my opinion, from Atlanta. The shootings and the deaths in both cases, right? They're very different. And again, you want to hear my thoughts on that? Hit us up with a comment, and I can 100% break that down for you. I've got some friends we could probably bring on at high levels in law enforcement if they want, but we can maybe discuss that as well. I think it would be fun. But
that would be an interesting conversation if we could, and especially as time goes on. Like, it's still pretty raw, but as we get further from the actual event and look at it more logically, which is where I tend to come from, than passionately. I think that's part of the reason that I have the role in life that I do. Like, I'm pretty laid back, so I can't imagine protesting anything, much less rioting. So I as far as I disagree with something, I disagree with it. Whatever, you've got your opinion, I've got mine, and doesn't matter where we meet or don't meet. But how about this? Who decides what a threat is when we say it's a definition of a threat? Because if there's a peaceable collection of people that are protesting minimum wage, and there are others opposed to that, saying, you're sucking up all my taxes and screw you, go find a different job. Then these are the opposing factors or factions that are standing across the street or across the walkway. And one says to the other side, I'm gonna find where you live and throw a rock through your window. Now, does that suddenly, that makes that a riot at that point? And that's when we as taxpayers expect the police force or whatever force to come in and separate and break it up?
I don't necessarily think that makes it a riot. That makes it a threat. The action itself would make it violent, right? There's the threat of violence, and then there's violence. So if they're like, I'm going to find your house, I'm going to throw a rock in it, and then they just stand there, and you can still peacefully protest whatever it is that you want, that's not an infringement on your civil rights. It is a threat to your person, though, which is a criminal act, and you have recourse for that civilly with law enforcement. So it's not as clear cut as people want it to be. We want those 30-second sound bites that make it easy for us to digest without having to put any thought into it. And to me, that is a slap in the face for the American way. Just who we are. We need to think about these things. We need to talk about them and digest them. But we just want it on Facebook. We want it on Instagram, and we wanted 30-second sound bites on pick a media outlet, and you cannot do that. What's going on in the U.S. is not new. Violence is not new in the U.S., unfortunately, but it doesn't mean that we can have a simple answer for it. It's very complex. I was actually just having this conversation over Facebook Messenger with a buddy of mine we served with 20 years ago. He's a pastor now, wrote a book. Anybody wants to, it's great, fantastic, faith-based book, actually called the Three Commands. And he is farther on the left than I am. I'm a center-right guy. He's farther on the left. But we had a great civil discussion about something that I had posted on social media, looking for discussions because I do that. And we disagree about some fundamental things. But one of the things that we can both agree on is that it is a complex issue that does not have a simple answer. Violence in America, and all the civil unrest that's going on right now. You can't just say that it's law enforcement's fault without addressing the systemic violence in the U.S. and the mental health component behind that, and everything else that we're asking law enforcement to be counselors and social workers and marriage counselors and kinetic strike guys. Oh, and to enforce the law, and not providing them mental health for that, and not paying them enough for it. You know, there's ways it's way too complex, right?
Right.
So anyway,
and it sounds like we've got another conversation to be had about law enforcement for sure.
Yes,
so
100%. We can't get in that today.
Yeah, well, a little bit. We just did, which is fine.
Man,
that's going to happen.
I could deep dive into that big time. But,
I want to point out that, and that's a big reason that we're here, is because of these 30-second sound bites that seem to be like, that's it. That's all anyone. That's not true. That's all a lot of people focus on, and it becomes frustrating. And why not have an outlet? So the fact that we have this, what a fantastic time in our history that we've got this opportunity to come and speak like this. So maybe we can bring it back. Let's talk a little bit more about the Boogaloo. I'm still really curious about what that means.
So the Boogaloo as a movement, again, is a group that advocates the second Civil War. Because they believe that that's how the only way you can bring America back to its original ideals is to have a civil war. Now, a lot of times what's happening is they're showing up places where other protests are happening. And if you've seen a picture of guys in Hawaiian shirts with tactical gear on and carbines and pistols and all of that stuff, that's usually who they are. Right. Some of them are infiltrating other groups, but so is Antifa and other movements. They're infiltrating groups and causing violence for violence sake as well. But so let's focus on the Boogaloo.
Yeah.
I have two main points about the Boogaloo, and I think there are some people here who know me that are going to be surprised on my stance with the Boogaloo, because as a patriot, I believe that it is your civic duty to throw off the yoke of terrorism if you are being oppressed. It is in our founding documents. We are told by our founding fathers. One, it's the reason why we have the 2A, is so that each citizen can be armed to fight against a tyrannical government, right? It is your duty to do that. However, until your ability for civic redress, your First Amendment, voting, showing up at political discourse and city meetings, until all of your civic duties and responsibilities are stripped away from you at the barrel of a gun from that said government, you are not fucking oppressed. You're not. So let's just get that clear. Because your political party does not get elected doesn't mean you're oppressed. As much as I dislike the current incumbent in the White House, he's not a dictator. This is not tyranny, right? Our founding fathers understood tyranny, so we need to have a historical base for that.
So being asked to wear a mask is not
tyranny. It's stupid as shit based on scientific evidence that is out there. I just made somebody's head explode that's listening.
Yeah, there's a few people actually. Yeah, and again, please make sure you record that hashtag the Gray Man Project and get your head exploding. Thank you.
But it's not tyranny. Okay. So people think when they vote, their party doesn't get elected, new party comes in and enacts a bunch of policies, executive orders, and all that stuff that they dislike. The guy is a dictator. They're not. They're actually used.
Really?
Man, so? I hear that all the time, man. I hear that all the time.
That's what you get for being on Facebook.
You're right. You're right. But here's my issue with that. Voting is the minimum level of engagement in the civic process. So if that's all you're doing, shame on you. If you are not involved with your city council, if you are not involved with your state representatives, if you are not involved in any type of lobby group, whether you like lobbyists or not, that's how shit gets done in Congress. You're not doing that stuff. And if you don't like it so much, if you're not running for an office at the city, county, state, or federal level, then only when all of that stuff has happened can you say you have exhausted all of your possible resources. And then when all of those avenues are stripped away and you couldn't do any of those things, is it tyranny? That is the base level that I work from.
All right.
When we're looking at this. So I think it's important that everybody out there in YouTube land and podcast land understands where I look at it, having been a guy who spent 23 years in uniform defending the Constitution. Okay?
So you've got the right to have your opinion. I think we can agree on that.
100%. Yep. Okay. So this group believes that the only way to change course in the U.S. right now is civil war. And so let's think about that for a second, right? You advocate the American way of life in righting this ship by making a hard right or left turn, however you look at it, through violence. And what you're advocating really is the murder of American citizens on American soil because you don't like the current political climate. That's exactly what I see. Because a civil war is Americans fighting Americans and killing each other on American soil. Is that really what you want? The first Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, had as many dead as the entire Vietnam War. And Gettysburg was a 3-day battle. And that was long before we had the weaponry and the machine gun and the technological capability that we have today. And I tell people that if you're part of this movement and we're friends, you need to look at yourself in the fucking mirror and you need to ask yourself, is that really what you're advocating? And if it's not, perhaps you should shift gears a little bit. That's the Boogaloo. That's literally what they are advocating. So
I'd like to dig in a little bit, and I know you've got a lot of points about Boogaloo, and we've got some limited time. But yeah, I'm curious. So is Boogaloo a formal? When you say it's a movement, I think back to the days of when Tea Party was a thing. Like that became like, okay, we've got a new party, but it's not a party, and it's organized, but it's grassroots, so it's not structured. And now we have something called Boogaloo, which is maybe guys in Hawaiian shirts that are armed, and maybe they stand for these things, and maybe you do believe in some of it, and maybe not all of it, but are you part of it? And from my standpoint, does anybody even claim to be part of it, or are we just labeling a group of people that we believe to fit this mold to be Boogaloos? So how do we define that? How can we establish what Boogaloo is then?
There are actual groups that go by the term Boogaloo Boys, and it's significant enough that actually within the last, I think it was 2 weeks, Facebook has prohibited any group labeled Boogaloo Boy to have a page because they believe it's right wing and extremist.
All right.
I mean, I've got some issues if they allow Antifa to have groups, but that's a whole nother section, right? So there are groups, but there's also militia. There are local militia groups. There are 3%ers. There's groups called Plowshares and Sovereign Citizens, and there's a bunch of other things out there that are separatist groups. And if you are part of a local militia, which is historic for the U.S., I've got no issue with that. If you and your friends go out and you're training in the woods, there are some of it that I laugh at, like hysterically laugh at.
Yeah.
But
send us your videos, please.
Yes, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It is when you advocate the violent overthrow of our government because you don't like the way things are going that I have an issue with. And that is the Boogaloo Boys. There are some militia groups, like local militia groups, and there's a difference between militia and National Guard. Okay, we're not talking historic term militia. We're talking current term militia. Current term militia is they're not official representation of the state, right? They're local. Just a bunch of dudes getting together. Some of them are former military and they're out in the woods playing war, training up for the, when the actual boog kicks off. You know, they're thinking EMPs and, you know, the end of the world and Armageddon and that kind of stuff. And they want to be ready.
Yeah.
You want to do, Armageddon. You want to do that? That's cool, man. I'm a dude who believes in preparedness. Ask anybody who knows me, right? I believe in being prepared and being trained and having plans of action and rehearsing them with your friends and family that you care about and having, you know, the ability to take care of yourself. I 100% believe in that. I'm a big, obviously self-defense guy, personal defense guy. Yes. But that's different than what we're talking about. So if you're a militia dude, don't get your panties in a wad. I'm okay with what you're doing as long as you don't advocate the violent overthrow of the U.S. government. The Boogaloo Boys movement does exactly that. And what, for me, and this is going to piss some people off too, and that's okay.
All right.
What I find is funny is that the majority of them are more than likely going to die of heart disease and diabetes before combat. If you see them, dude, you need to shed about 150 pounds before you think you can do anything in combat. As a dude who did 4 combat tours in Iraq and 3 in Afghanistan and Desert Storm, and I've been in that, trust me, bro, you're not combat hardened. Just because you buy 511 tactical gear and wear cargo pants and a Hawaiian shirt doesn't make you an operator, even with the beard and sleeve tattoos. So calm the fuck down.
Yeah, as a guy that has the muffin top going on, I love seeing those videos of guys that are prepping, they're all ready to go, and they've got the fat rolls that are hanging out of the
literally just sweating gravy and gonna die of diabetes standing there out in front of whatever monument you're trying to protect.
Yeah, and this is not. I just had this conversation with some friends last night. You know, somebody in our local community was burned at the stake on social media for fat shaming and body shaming, and which is. It's an issue, right? That's a thing, and you don't have to be shameful or stupid or mean about it, right? You don't have to be. And at the same time, it can be a realistic conversation that we could have, because if you're not fit, I'm not fit right now. If the thing we're calling Boogaloo happens, or you know whatever the EMP happens, I am not going to be the fittest guy. I'm not. If it's the fittest that wins, I'm not the guy that's going to win, and I recognize that. So I take action to fix it. That's my personal choice. Somebody chooses not to. That's their personal choice. I'm not here to shame someone about it. I don't. That's not part of who I am anyway. But I do happen to have a retort from the folks that may have that concern.
Rat bastard.
Yeah.
You are one ugly motherfucker.
Yeah. And I just a quick note on that. Mike and I spent many hours in Bismarck, North Dakota, in a small apartment on I don't want to brag, 32-inch TV that my roommate had at the time, playing Nintendo 64, a little bit of, yes sir, little Duke Nukem.
Hell yeah.
And so that's a little nod to our past.
I am the Duke.
And I felt like it was appropriate for who we were going to talk about today. Maybe there are some Duke Nukems out there in Hawaiian shirts these days that are ready.
Time to bring the pain.
Yeah. And I say this as a guy who used to be 210 pounds. And none of it was muscle, right? It wasn't like I was a bodybuilder. You know, I'm about 175 now at 5'10". And I'm not saying that you got to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or you got to be a distance runner. But if you are 100 pounds overweight trying to wear tactical gear and thinking that you're hard, you need to rethink your life choices, because combat is difficult. Anybody out there who's ever been in a gunfight knows exactly what I'm talking about, especially when you're wearing kit. When I was deployed, my full kit with my rifle, grenades, radio, mags, 3-day pack. We were doing dismounted. I was close to 260 pounds. It was 80 pounds of shit that I carried with me daily. So if I got to put that on and go out there and do my job, if I'm carrying another 100 pounds of extra weight, what do you think is going to happen in a fight? You are the first one dying, bro. Sorry. And I don't care how hard you did that you think you are.
Yeah, so, but I'm mad, so it's fine. I'll push it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we can have a whole nother.
Let's just add that to the list. Yeah.
Woo. So So surprise for some of the folks that know me, that know my stance on the 2A and defending tyranny and how I feel about the American civic duty. I 100%, absolutely, unequivocally do not support the Boogaloo Boys because of their stance on civil war. It is a group that advocates violence against Americans to overthrow the government. Violence against Americans. So that's my issue with it. And
All right.
somebody else has a different look, or a different view, tag us in the comments and let's talk about it, man. We can have another whole discussion. But you need to logically, articulately, and educatedly tell me how killing Americans on American soil makes sense to you politically and ethically right now. If you are part of that movement, I want to hear it.
So let's say that I am part of a group, whatever the group is, that has protested for what I feel is more than a significant amount of time, whether that would be years, decades, centuries. I have tried every type of peaceful protest, and my voice has not been heard. And it's now to a point that I don't feel like there's anything peaceful that I can do to break through, to have this wrong righted. And violence is the only way to go. Like there's nothing else. Is there? Am I like?
But is it honestly? Is violence the answer for that? Civic violence, the answer for that? Have you tried civic engagement through the political process? Have you tried the political process itself? Have you supported any other group?
Yeah. So screw the politicians and that whole process. That there's no way that that's going to survive what's coming next. So why would I even engage it?
Then you're wrong. If you haven't done that, then you have not exhausted all of your avenues, and then all you're relying on is on violence because you didn't get your goddamn way.
Right, but I mean, I can't.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, but I can't get elected.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried running civically? Have you ever tried running for your city council?
Yeah.
Until those things are answered, and that's what our founding fathers believed.
Yeah.
Because think about how long they went trying to work within the confines of the British Empire before there was violence. Even at the outset, as a guy with a master's degree in U.S. history who focused on revolutionary America from 1750 to 1810, I will tell you that our founding fathers didn't want to be their own separate country when they started this whole endeavor up. All they wanted was representation in Parliament to address their grievances and to repeal taxes. If they could have done that and stayed in the British Union, they would have done it. They resorted to violence when violence was brought upon them. They were being, British soldiers were being quartered in their houses. People were being drug off and shipped overseas for trial by the magistrates that were not their peers. I mean, they would bring in British judges. I mean, there were a lot of oppressive policies that were going on that finally led to violence. But they first worked within their civic process until there was violence, right? And until you've done that, you have not exhausted all of your issues. Martin Luther King himself spoke out against rioting. It made no sense to him. I mean, really the father of the civil rights movement, the man who is responsible for amazing change in this country for the better, for putting us on a path that we needed to be on, spoke out against rioting and violence. And I'm not saying that violence is never the answer, right? Ask the Jewish population of Europe.
Right.
Right? I bet you they would agree that us coming in there and taking the shit out of the Germans was the right thing to do. Sometimes a bully needs to be punched in the mouth because the only thing a bully understands is a bloody nose. So you can't talk a bully down, right?
Well, okay, yes.
But have you, in any one of those instances, used all of the other processes first?
Yeah. And
I'm a guy that's all about taking the fight to the enemy. Trust me.
Yeah.
But shouldn't be your number one go-to response, which is exactly where we're at right now.
So I'm trying to put this in terms of Boogaloo because there's so much. I mean, we're right up against talking about race and,
Yes.
and I don't want us to get off track with that. And frankly, I don't think we are the two individuals that can fairly even address
somebody else on here.
Yeah, I have no framework for addressing that. So from the terms of the Boogaloo, it sounds like the easy answer to what a Boogaloo is a Boogaloo boy is a man, whatever they are, person is they want violence. They're just seeking violence. That almost feels too easy. Like that's uh, almost adding a prejudice to it. Like, is there more to it that we're not talking about? Is there more, like, is there something positive about it? Because if there isn't, then why would anybody join up unless they're just wanting to be violent, in which case they won't accomplish anything other than nuisance and possibly hurting some individuals until it gets all completely knocked away or whatever it is. So what is there anything beyond what we've talked about that Boogaloo stands for?
Well, I mean, they're a pro-gun, anti-government group of movements that, when their specific ideology varies, like the specific ideology varies on views on like race and political affiliation. I mean, some are far right, neo-Nazi and white supremacists. Some are that advocate race war and civil war. Some are just your far right militia guys that believe we've done all we can and we need civil war. It's a far right movement that the crux of being part of the Boogaloo movement is advocating for the second Civil War.
And that's the core that holds them all, that holds
Yes.
these groups together, is a second Civil War. And has,
Exactly.
to your knowledge, have there been any action made, or is it just a lot of saber rattling?
Right now, it's just a lot of saber. Well, so there were a couple instances. There was, what was it? I'll have to go back and look. I believe it was at the beginning of June in California. There were 3 people that ended up getting a gunfight with sheriff's deputies out in California. 2 of them were veterans. One was Army. The other one was Navy. And then there was one active duty Air Force guy, by the way, calm the fuck down, Air Force, simmer down now. That was on active duty, and they were part of that movement, and they had a manifesto, and what they were trying to do is start a war through, calling the cops. So they had IEDs sitting on their property, and as the police showed up, they were going to engage IEDs and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it was supposed to be the first attack in a long series of getting this movement started. So there are people out there that do that and that are pushing for that. This isn't just theoretical.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, a lot of these groups that show up at these protests and on the other side of whoever's protesting, these far right groups that show up on the other side, their long-term goal is the boog, right? So, and again, if a militia, to me, if you look at the concept of it, is different than the boog. It's different. And if you are part of the boog, you need to have a strong, damn educated argument against me about why that's where we should be, and not just because you're frustrated with America right now.
Which
Because
would be exciting. I would love to see that conversation. But I would like to. I'm going to give you some homework if you would, after we're done with all this and we get this all published out there. Folks that are listening, come to our Facebook if you'd like to see this. But Mike, if you would, maybe find a couple of these articles that you're talking about that we could add into our Facebook feed. Would that be realistic? All right.
100% can do.
Not, again, not that I doubt what you're saying, but I would like to see more examples of this too. And now that my eyes have been opened, if you will, I would do some more reading on it. And this is, another part of, what I'm finding fascinating about this process of Mike and I working together through this is doing more research and studying more on some of these things that are part of the undercurrent of what our society is these days. So I
how
think
polarized we're becoming, and that's the crux of these far left groups and these far right extreme groups, is it's political polarization, and they're confusing political polarization for oppression and tyranny, right? And so
yes,
that's my issue with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're advocating violence because you are confusing what I just talked about. You are confused about those issues, and you're advocating violence over it. So, again,
if there's a, and I hate to keep cutting you off here, but if there's anyone listening or somebody that knows someone that is a copyright expert or can help us out with this. I just had an idea, Mike, and we haven't even talked about this, so pulling back the curtain again. How about we watch Idiocracy together in the terms of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and you could explain how we're becoming that. Maybe that would.
I would love to do that.
I'm the guy that keeps reining us back as far as copyright infringement and that kind of stuff. That speaks to my soul as a guy that's in the music industry or has been in the past, and it's important to me that we don't infringe on that. So that's part of my commitment to our listeners, is that we're trying to be as good as possible. But watching a movie might dig into that a little too far. But if someone can help us figure out how to make that happen, I would love for us to watch that. It's a fun movie, but it's also a little scary that our next president may have patches proclaiming McDonald's is a sponsor. Or
electrolytes, Gatorade. It's what plants crave because it's got electrolytes.
It's got electrolytes.
Yeah. So at the end of this, and I've said my piece. You guys obviously know how I feel about Boogaloo Boys. I want to ensure everybody out there understands. Again, I'm not against militias. I'm not against personal protection and self-defense and personal readiness and planning for unforeseen circumstances. I'm okay. I'm a guy who has an action plan for a boogaloo. I'm a guy who has an action plan for some economic collapse. I'm a guy who has a plan for EMP. My family has that. We have plans for self-defense in the house, outside of the house. Firearms, not firearms. We have the ability to take care of ourselves medically, nutritionally, all of that stuff. We have a core group of people that we talk to that we would lean on. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think in modern society, if you do not think about that stuff, or at least look into training on, you're doing yourself and your family and the ones you love a great disservice. All republics have an apex, man, all of them throughout history. And I'm not saying that we're at the point of collapse, obviously, but all of them have an apex. And I will tell you personally, if you ask me, I think we're past our apex and we're on the backhill slide. And we can talk about that on a podcast too, when I believe our apex was and why, but we're past that. So you have to plan for certain inevitables. And I'm hoping it doesn't happen in my time, my children's time, my grandchildren's time, any of that. Yeah. But I've been in enough fights to understand that not being prepared is foolish. And I have a responsibility to be prepared for my family and friends. So again, if you're out there and you're training yourself, or you're former military and you're training some friends and you're putting some bug plans together and you're putting some economic crash plans or whatever together and you want to take care of each other, fine, dude. If it's The Walking Dead, let's do this. I'm ready, man. I firmly, me and my friends and family, we're ready. But I'm not advocating for that.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
I'm not
that's where you stop.
advocating for that.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much encapsulates what I expected that we were going to talk about. And from here, so everyone knows, we really don't have a long-term plan on where this is going to go from here, or like even what we're going to talk about next, because part of what's important to us is this is an organic conversation. So your involvement, from my perspective, Mike has done a fantastic job of being involved in social media and reaching out. And we absolutely encourage everyone to keep up with that. Let us know what you think, what you want to hear, what we're going to talk about. Our commitment right now is once a week. We want to have at least one of these podcasts out. We want to try to get it up on YouTube, try to get it out to Buzzsprout, which congratulations to the Gray Man podcast. We had a fantastic turn this last week and plan to continue that. And
we're also on iTunes.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And one thing, I think we have it on our Facebook page, that there's a specific, there's a direct link so you can get the podcast. And I was able to do that on my Android device even. So you can pick it up that way. It's a great way to listen to it. And again, just keep in touch with us. So as we wrap up our feature, Shitty Choices.
I don't know these, by the way. You wouldn't let me know what they were.
This one is it's Independence Day themed, because we're recording this on the 5th of July. So happy birthday, America, belatedly.
America.
We both Mike and I celebrated with smoked meats and yeah, we had
bourbons.
and bourbons. All the things were good. So we're going to try not to get into a recipe show, but we may at some point talk about smoking meats, because that is freedom in I
Yes.
wouldn't say freedom in your mouth, but that's a different thing.
There's a channel on the interwebs that we probably should.
That's all. Yeah, you get a password for that. It's a thing. But I want to give a shout out. This is very personal for me, to my my daughter, who has blessed me with 3 grandchildren and has blossomed into a fantastic mother and a professional. She's going to school to get into the medical field now. So I just got to see her and some of my grandkids last night. It was really awesome. And one of the things that came up during conversation was shitty choices. And not only is she a fan, but she stepped up to describe the third choice that always happens. And I'm a proud daddy. So we're gonna start with that. So in these shitty choices, Mike will always have this, in case he can't decide between the other 3. You lose the feeling in your genitals anytime your significant other is aroused. And so that's always the third choice, in case the other 2 just don't work. And one thing that had occurred to me last night as we were talking about this is that could have some really bad moments in life if suddenly you lose the feeling in your genitals and you're not with your significant other. So you think about that as you're choosing this one, if it ever comes up. So here you go. Independence Day themed. One of my favorite movies of all time is a cheesy Independence Day, the original that came out. I love that movie. I still remember sitting in the theater with the flashes of white and these spaceships that were coming in and the shadow over the moon, all of these things. So I love that movie. So this is for you, Mike. This is Independence Day themed. Your 2 first choices. You wake up July 4th, 2011. Or 2021 rather. So you're going to wake up next year on July 4th. And number 1, there are a dozen huge alien spaceships around the world. And they're saying, their message to us is, we come in peace. But they've already vaporized North Korea because it could not be saved. So that's your first. You've got these dozen ships. We come in peace, but these guys we don't like so much, so we blew them up. All right. Or there are millions of tiny spaceships that are actively attacking. You wake up and bam, they're here. They're all over the world, millions of these tiny ships. And their weapons drain just a little bit of energy from people, from living beings, from electronics, just a little bit of energy with each impact, each time they hit us. So you've got all these ships, and it's an annoyance. And maybe it could cause long-term issues for everybody, but for now, it's kind of like the mosquito you can flick off. But it's happening, and they're definitely alien, and they're definitely coordinated. Or you lose the feelings in your genitals every time your spouse is aroused, your significant other. So,
all right. So
yes.
My choices. All right.
Yes.
I mean, I hate North Korea. That's not a secret at all, right?
Yes. Yep.
I hate some bitches pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like the idea of an alien force being able to vaporize an entire population simply because they choose they don't like them. That doesn't bode well for where we're at right now in the U.S., right? Mm-hmm. I would rather choose, and I'm certainly not going to lose a feeling in my genitalia. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, so far.
Yeah. You ask me when I'm in my 70s, maybe.
Well, my challenge is to come up with 2 that are so close or so impossible that I need you to lose the feeling in your genitals.
Yep.
I didn't think I was going to say that this morning, but all right.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
I would choose the million tiny spacecrafts that are annoying and might drain a little energy out of us, because I feel we have, as a human race, and as intelligent and resourceful as we are, the ability to develop something to have perhaps combat that. What we don't have is the ability to develop something that can combat a ship that vaporizes a whole goddamn population.
All right.
That's not going to happen.
It seems.
So I'd rather fight a million tiny insect enemies than one giant one that vaporizes a country.
Yeah. So that's, and I struggled with how to bring that to you, because I kind of felt that that's what it was going to be. And of course, I used North Korea specifically, trying to throw you off, because
of course you did,
those guys. But
of course you did, you SOB.
So then the problem is going to be, because I have to play the other side to this then, because the problem will be, while we're trying to develop a fight against these million tiny ships, their concerted effort will keep throwing us off our game. We're going to get a little bit stupider. We're going to start losing our
Oh,
energy, and then all the computers are going to start losing a little bit of energy. So it's tough. I mean, I envision I want to have one of those little zapper fly swatters that goes around. That would be fun for a
Yes.
little bit at least until
Yeah.
I lose all my senses. But there was really no winning on that one. It was just a fun Independence Day thing. And
I like that one. I like it. I mean, I would still like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, here's hoping that we don't face that. I still would rather shit my pants while driving once a month than face the aliens that may or may not attack us. But I do hope that we have aliens someday. I want to know that there's life out there. Yeah.
I would still like to see North Korea vaporized, just so everybody's clear. I mean,
Clear on that.
just because I didn't see that choice, I take that choice.
That's the 30-second piece that somebody needs to pull out of the podcast, and that's what you need to broadcast out there. Mike said he likes North Korea. I don't know. He's planning some kind of a friendship.
Friggin' communist in North Dakota. Ugh.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So, hey, this was a lot of fun. I can't thank you enough, everybody that's with us on this journey, and to my best friend, Mike. This has been an amazing time. So thank you. Thanks to everybody. This has been good.
Thank you for keeping us on track this time. It was me that started going more off track this time than you. And it's been a blast. I enjoy the conversations. Thank you guys out there in podcast and Facebook land for listening to us and our rapid growth. Keep sharing us on Facebook. Keep talking about us. Give us feedback. We're not necessarily going to respond to your comments because we talked about that on episode 1, the introduction. Mm-hmm. But if you've got issues with episode 2, the Boogaloo, put them up there. Let's talk about it. If you can give me an educated argument on why the Boogaloo should happen and you advocate for civil war on American soil, let's hear it. Give me an educated, non-feeling based argument.
Yes.
I want a fact-based argument about why it should happen.
Yes.
That's what we want.
No emotions. Live long and prosper, for sure.
Word.
That's what we're here for. All right, stay safe out there, everybody. Wear your masks if you think it's appropriate. Don't wear your masks if you don't want to. But I'm going to get up on my pulpit now. If you go into a business and they're requiring that you wear a mask, go someplace else if you don't want to wear a mask, please. Don't make it hard on that poor soul that's just trying to earn a living. So keep it real,
Absolutely.
but stay safe and do what you think is right. I think that makes it work for everybody.
Agreed. We look forward to talking to you guys next week for episode 3.
All right. See ya.